Welcome to today's webinar, School-Wide Approaches to Social and Emotional Learning, brought to you by Simple K-12. My name is Lori, and I'm here with Dr. Sheryl Harmer, and we are so excited to have all of you joining in with us today. This webinar has been brought to you free today thanks to our sponsor, Apperson. At Apperson, our mission is to maximize potential. We advance educational and professional development by providing innovative services and solutions designed to assess performance and measure success. We deliver exceptional customer service driven by our core values of integrity, passion, respect, and teamwork, and this results in greater knowledge and enriched outcomes for students, teachers, and business leaders alike. Now, for those of you who are joining in live, I just went ahead and sent out a tweet from our Twitter account. You can feel free to retweet to your followers, invite them to attend today's session that is free and open to the public, thanks to our friends at Apperson. Just be sure to include this link as well as the hashtag SK12 when you send out your tweet. Once again, that live back channel chat, great place for you all as attendees to take notes and chat. 100% optional, don't feel obligated to join in, but it is a lot of fun. I just went ahead and shared that link out through the chat area there of GoToWebinar, and we will have a few minutes at the end of our session for some live Q&A with Sheryl. Feel free to submit your questions through that questions box of GoToWebinar. Now, it does tend to auto-collapse, but if you click on that orange arrow, the question box will open and you can type in your question. Now, a little bit about our presenter. Dr. Sheryl Harmer holds a doctorate in educational leadership and policy studies and superintendent certification from the University of Washington. Now, she has 40 years of experience as an elementary principal, a K-12 teacher, a learning specialist, and a community college instructor. Following her public school career, Sheryl was the director of program development at Committee for Children and was also the recipient of the 1998 NAESP National Distinguished Principal of the Year Award for Washington State. Sheryl, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Lori. I'm looking forward to sharing some time with everyone. Can you see my screen?
Looks great. We're good to go.
All righty. Again, thank you everyone for hanging in there. Those of you who have been here for the series of webinars, and those of you who may be new, what we'll try to do is loop back a little bit so that you have the full context of what we've been sharing over these past several hours. My colleague Paul LaBeouf and I are really enjoyed spending time with you because this is a topic that's so near and dear to our hearts. So the fact that so many of you are tuning in and are hanging in there is just really great. I'm going to be looking at social and emotional learning from a system-wide approach. And I will say, as a school principal, I saw the power of an entire system that was aligned toward creating a rich learning environment that was really centered in social and emotional learning. It was an opportunity to see the power of everyone working together and the collective energy that can be had when you have all adults and the children sort of aligned and in focus learning together. So I wanted to start off this session also with a story. I had told a little bit about Scott's story in my first session. I'd like to tell you the story of Marcus. And Marcus was really a very bright child. We've all seen these kids who are very bright. Academically, it wasn't really a problem for him. He quickly grasped concepts. He was reading far above grade level, and he had a science mind that was really kind of a thrill. But he was a social disaster, and he couldn't work with others. He really had no friends. He bullied others. And generally, what happened with Marcus is he missed out on frequent opportunities to learn from other kids in the system that were maybe less gifted, but who had lots to teach him about the nuances of caring and culture and creativity. So he wasn't really fully able to leverage his range of gifts. He was bright, but he was miserable. And so we made Marcus a focus. We enlisted his parents. We really looked at how we could wrap the entire system around him. At that time, his classroom was receiving, as well as the other classrooms, social emotional learning lessons at the universal level, so that was great. He was learning self-management and social awareness and relationship skills, but he really needed to learn how to apply those skills, and he needed support and coaching throughout the day. So we put him together in a small group of others and gave them the task of working with the playground monitors to figure out a complex playground system that rotated kids through different zones, that minimized conflicts, and gave everyone equal access to all the equipment. He found his voice in that, his leadership voice. It found that he was able to build on his strengths. He began to learn from others about how to really take care of his areas of weakness. And it really helped transform Marcus into the kind of student that he was really meant to be, which was academically gifted and able to use his gifts in relationship with others. So the achievement that he gained by nurturing and fostering and being reinforced for his social and emotional growing competence really helped him find his full level of, I think, achievement all the way around. And I'm going to share with you a little bit. We've talked about the research around how that makes a difference academically, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So before I dive in, I'd like to say that our goals of this session are to really understand the power of a school-wide approach to social and emotional learning. For those of you who've been here, we've taken a wide look. We've also, on these webinars, we've taken wide looks, we've taken some deep dives, and now we're going to kind of go back out on a wide look at what does it look like school-wide. I also want to spend a little bit of time talking about how we can support educators in building their own resilience. It's very important, as we'll discuss, that educators come first and foremost with competence within themselves. And Paul mentioned that in his presentation. We have lots of materials that are available through the system that we're offering, and we're going to talk about why that's really important and some specific things you can do. Then I have a real example of an effective school-wide or system-wide practice. Actually, this is at the district level, so we're going to look at some real action of what's happening in the United States and an area that's really taken SEL to the next level and are doing some really wonderful things. And we don't want to forget the critical roles for caregivers in the community. I think as we're taking a look at this work, we always want to remind ourselves that what we do in schools is not in isolation. So we'll take a look at that. Social and emotional learning has been defined. Paul has mentioned it. I mentioned it. I don't want to go over it too much, but I do want to make sure that everyone who is on this webinar, if you missed the first ones, really understands what we mean when we talk about social and emotional learning. Our friends at CASEL, that's the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, which is a wonderful resource that you can get at casel.org, has defined the field of social and emotional learning as the process of acquiring and applying necessary knowledge, attitudes, behaviors, and skills. So it's a variety of competencies that one has to acquire and become proficient in. Certainly, skill building is a complete part of that, but the behaviors and the attitudes and the knowledge underneath that are equally important. They have defined these 5 categories of areas of focus, domains that can be strengthened and can be really enhanced, but we are also saying can be measured. First of all, there's two categories that kind of go together, and they focus on the self. There's a self-awareness piece that has to do with understanding your own emotions and your own values and strengths. And then it goes hand in hand with, once you have a self-awareness, what's your self-management strategy? How can you manage your emotions and your behaviors to really focus on the goals that you want to set? 2 other areas that follow on are social areas. Building competencies in social awareness, and this is how you show understanding and empathy for others. This is foundational to be able to see the world from another person's point of view. This comes into play in academic work when you ask children to look at a piece of literature from a character's point of view and to think how they might feel. So that being able to read social situations is really important, how to foster relationship skills with others, how to work through conflicts, how to work in teams. Those are critically important skills. And then finally, the whole area of responsible decision making. How do we apply all of our competencies that we've gained through self-awareness and social awareness and apply them toward making good, constructive, ethical choices about the behaviors that we decide to bring into the world. Very quickly, our friends at Castle have produced in 2011, Durlach and Weisberg, published an amazing study that was the biggest study done at that point. It involved 213 studies. It was a meta-analysis of 213 studies that involved 270,000 students in kindergarten through 12th grade. What they found is that schools that have an intentional focus through explicit programming and through really a supportive system that is taking the culture and transforming practice to a deep level demonstrate a great improvement in attitudes, a great improvement in social skills, a great improvement in classroom behavior, and I think a very important statistic to note is an 11% improvement in achievement test scores. So when we're looking at our pressures to have our efficacy as teachers measured by the achievement test scores, hopefully we're shifting away from that. Hopefully, I think we're beginning to realize as an education system that we can't just measure outcomes on an academic test. But it's nice to know and great to know that when we work on social and emotional competences, when we build those skills, it actually does result in improvement in test scores. There's also a decrease in conduct problems and in a decrease they found in anxiety and depression. So these are very important findings that show scientifically that what we do to promote social and emotional learning can have direct effects. So we need to look at this for just a minute, this whole system approach. And this is kind of a framework, I guess, for thinking about it. And Paul mentioned how important it was to think about his three-legged stool that he mentioned, which is a combination of looking at the culture and the climate, how you integrate instruction, SEL instruction, how you teach explicitly SEL skills, and then he mentioned the fourth leg, which is taking care of the teacher, and the teacher piece brings to it. This graph really captures all of that context. I think the important piece here is that it takes an entire system if it's well aligned. Now, you can start at a small level, and we need to talk about that in terms of how you actually get started at a small level. But when you zoom out and look at the whole system, what you want to make sure is that you're building this supportive system that has all the pieces aligned and that truly is a shared vision and shared language, a comprehensive approach that really reflects the values of your entire system. Now, there are many ways to measure how you are right now, and it really does start with figuring out where you're at. So we need to figure out how we assess needs. Where are we now as a system? And then how do we get started? What is the leadership? And we're going to talk about that just a little bit. I think it's important to remember that commitment to social and emotional learning is a commitment to transforming the culture of your school. That takes time, and it takes a long-term focus. This isn't something that you just do in a one-shot deal. It's a start. I never discourage anyone from entering wherever they're at, but for true change to happen, it requires a sustained effort over time, and it really helps if you have a focus and it begins with some direct leadership. There are ways to figure out where you're at in the school climate to measure, and we talk about starting with good data. I do want to bring up an opportunity for you to look at various climate surveys. We're not offering any right now. However, if you go to this site, there's a compendium of climate surveys that are created from the Office of Safe and Healthy Students out of the U.S. Department of Education Center on Safe, Supportive, and Learning Environments. And this website will give you compendium surveys that have been shown to have good data that you can use in terms of where you are right now. It starts, as I said, with leadership from all levels. Or it starts with leadership, and you can get leadership from all levels. I think it's important, if you're getting started, to find a champion. And maybe you're that champion. Maybe you are the champion that says, we need to think about this and we need to bring it forward. The important thing is to begin with where you want to go and have a vision, and then to find other people to work with you. I think if you can begin to learn about what the impact is around social and emotional learning, the value of it, and then begin to show those outcomes, those potential outcomes to people within your system, that's a good place to begin to convince people that this might be an area of focus that you want to take on. So it begins with a vision. It starts from the top, perhaps as a principal, but a teacher or instructional support folks need to be involved. And don't forget to involve the support staff on the playground, in the lunchroom, in bus drivers, and parents and out-of-school educators. All of these are potential champions that can work with you to form a steering committee, a learning community, a group that would like to understand more at a deeper level where your school is now and why it's important to go forward, and then to create a plan for what you can do about it. I would like to suggest even starting with staff meetings for teachers. I think there were many times when I, as a principal, found great leverage in just using those moments at a staff meeting to pique an interest or to create some shared learning opportunities. We have many exercises available in the strategies that Paul mentioned that give exercises for adults, things that adults can do for themselves. And you might take a look at those strategies and say, I'm going to introduce or suggest that we start our staff meeting with just a check-in, or start our staff meeting with one of these exercises, so that we're all getting a sense as adults what it means to experience social and emotional learning, and where how we can really kind of begin to feel that in ourselves, so that we can bring that to our students. So it does begin though with the adults. And there's an adult resilience model that I'd like to talk about just a little bit. Essentially, if we aren't in balance ourselves as adults, we cannot bring that same balance to our students. Students learn as we model. Students learn from what we say and do, or what we do more than what we say. And if we aren't taking care of ourselves, if we don't have a focus on all of these protective factors and bolstering those, then we are in danger of slipping into negativity or being vulnerable. So how do we promote our own adult resilience is really the question that we want to make sure that we address. It begins with the adults in the school, and it begins with you taking care of yourself. These may seem kind of simple and straightforward, but they're good reminders that we can balance work and personal life. We need to manage boundaries and limits that we're asking ourselves and others to do, or that we're responding to in terms of stresses that others are putting on us. It's important to cultivate a support system. And that can happen through establishing relationships, through a small learning group, whatever your support system is. It's a very important element to establish that. Getting a sense of your own strengths is really an important piece of it. Take stock of your own needs and create an intentional plan to address. Again, in the EVO SEL strategies, there's various checklists that you can do as a personal reflection as an adult to look through and say, how am I doing? What's important to me? How is that been brought forward within my life, and is there a way I can deepen that? It's been found that expressing gratitude and a sense of hopefulness really leads to reduced stress, and that's an important, just simple thing you can do each day. Having a time to tell yourself that when you do a simple act, that's going to be your cue and your prompt to express some internal gratitude and internal hopefulness. It's interesting what we can do to our brain chemistry when we just practice these kinds of simple practices. Finally, authoring your own sense of your life. You can listen to your inner voice, develop more effective communication, speak out for what you need, and take the initiative to make it happen. So paying attention to all of these dimensions are important. There are resources, as Paul mentioned, through the Devereaux Center for Resilient Children. They have a wonderful program that's been developed that he mentioned called Building Your Bounce. And I highly recommend that you take some time to take care of yourself. When we look at the DESA, the Devereaux Student Strengths Assessment, this is an opportunity to really begin to create an understanding of how you build a full system approach. Paul has mentioned the DESA and the resources that are available online through the EVO online platform. Whoops. And essentially, we're talking about getting good information. So there's something you can find out about what the climate of your school is. You can use that through a climate survey. But a really great way to really figure out where do we start with students is to do a DESA assessment, to figure out where your students are, where their strengths are. You can aggregate that information at the school level or at the classroom level or at the school-wide level. So to get a real snapshot of where your students are as a baseline, see where the strengths are, see where the needs are, and then you can begin to create a multi-tiered approach that meets kids where they're at, that has a plan for continuous improvement because you're monitoring progress through the DESA Mini, and it really helps you become more focused in terms and intentional about your program decisions and the design. It's about data-informed process. The strategies, again, are at many levels. They're at these levels available for you online, at the teacher-adult level, at the universal classroom level, at the small group level, at the individual level, and let's not forget home involvement, because it's critically important if you're building that system-wide approach that parents are reinforcing the language that you're using, that they're using the same kind of, they have the same kind of expectations and the same kind of approaches and skills that you are trying to teach at home or at school. So involve the parents. Many of the evidence-based programs that are available have a home component, and our DESA Strategies has a wonderful resource of home components. So these are all available online. In addition, we have some coaching and consulting supports available through the Apperson and Devereaux system that we can help you actually get started and help you think your way through how you expand your interest to involve the entire system. Some of that is teacher development, so learning in concert with each other or alone, having your own learning exploration. There's many resources available for teacher development, and Lori has just explained many of them through Simple K. So finding a way to expand your own understanding and professional development is important. And what happens then is you'll have that student growth that you can measure, and it'll lead to the student outcomes that we all are looking for and that research shows is possible. So it begins with getting good data, good information to inform your decisions. Again, if you have that good information, you can build this multi-tiered approach. You can decide what is the profile of our school and what is the best universal program that we need to use to give to everyone. You know, what's the specific needs? What fits with our own culture and climate? And based on data that you get from the screening with the DESA tool, you can then form small groups that really focus on building those individual skills. And for children who really need a more intensive support system, you can target the individual skill development, and building on strengths really create a very affirming model for all children. Again, there are really critical roles for caregivers and community. When we involve folks outside the school system, it really, in the steering committee or in our thinking processes, in that learning journey that we're on, you get alternative perspectives. It enriches your thinking. It helps to have shared expectations. Common language is so important so that we're catching those teachable moments, that we're building on those times when we see kids using the skills that we're trying to teach them, or we're coaching them where a possible skill might be useful. So using your caregivers, your home folks, your parents, and the community, the out-of-school time community or others, to really be a part of visioning and planning and sort of monitoring and sustaining your efforts over time is a critical piece. And that will deepen and really make it part of the culture. It can become part of, as Paul says, and we've said before, the way we do business around here. We always like to say, I like to say, it's you want SEL in the drinking water. And if SEL is in the drinking water, that means everyone is drinking the same, the same water, and they get it. So for the next little bit, I'd like to share with you an example of one district that has really embraced this whole school, whole district approach. Chino Valley Unified School District in California is really living this system-wide approach. At this particular situation, and it can start anywhere, but in this district, Dr. Sheryl Johnson was the visionary behind this, and Dr. Johnson is the coordinator for the Behavior Intervention Program. It came at the district level. This is a rather large district. They have 29,000 students, and they are rolling out a system-wide approach, beginning with 6 schools this year. That's K-8, and they're adding 10 more next year. So their vision is to create a district-wide approach that has multi-layers and is multi-tiered support for students. Let me tell you about some of the things they're using. So they have adopted the DESA as their baseline screening, and in this particular case, they are using the second step edition, the second step program as their universal curriculum. So they use the second step edition of the DESA to use baseline and to do some screening in terms of where kids are at. They, as a result of that screening, they have developed a multi-tiered approach, universal second step and PBIS. Now, some folks I heard on the last webinar ask about the compatibility of an evidence-based curriculum with PBIS. Absolutely, these two pieces can go hand in hand. In fact, if you chat with the PBIS folks, oftentimes they will say that they are the discipline framework, and it's really important to build the skills, the social and emotional skills, through a universal program that collaborates with that. So it fits together nicely, and depending on your individual needs, it may be the way to go. As a result then of this multi-tiered approach, they have small groups that they have formed, and these small groups receive 6 weeks of skill-focused work using selected strategies. And so they meet in small groups, they focused in on strengths and areas of need, and they have really taken it to the next level in terms of trying to move those kids to a different place. They're monitoring their progress using the Mini, and they're experiencing success. Now, there are also individual referrals that they've used, another program called Strong Kids that they've decided to use to complement their other work. And this Strong Kids curriculum really gets at those kids who need a deeper experience and a more rich focus. And then, of course, special education. Paul mentioned, and it's so true, that in special ed, if you can make SEL a part of an IEP and really focus on student strengths as well as areas of need, it is a powerful way to communicate with parents and kids, to let kids know what their strengths are. It really bolsters where they need in terms of their self-esteem and efficacy. Again, Chino is using progress monitoring, using the DESA Mini throughout the year, and then they're using the DESA Second Step Edition as their outcome measure. But schools are encouraged to innovate and customize and go deeper and broader. So there's this ownership that's critically important, and that's why it's important to have a steering committee. It's important to have a shared vision, and it's important to have folks who are able to find their way through it at their own rate and in their own way. They're creating a shared language with consistent expectations, and there's whole district alignment. So there's professional development that supports it, and it's a whole different district focus. One example shared with us from the assistant principal, Ryan Candelara, is at Walnut Avenue Elementary School, and he shared some examples of how children have been brought into helping create this school-wide shared language and shared expectations. They have developed the PAC approach, which means the pride, achievement, character, and knowledge, and these are what the values they stand for. And the children were instrumental in developing the language at the classroom level, from kindergarten all the way up to 6th grade, in terms of what are these expectations. And of course, they're printed up and posted around the school. They've extended their work onto the playground. They have established elementary school safe school ambassadors, and these kids are well trained in conflict resolution and helping their peers and younger students really navigate the challenges of being on the playground in productive and positive ways. So the kids are taking their skills and developing leadership as a result of that as well. Dr. Johnson says it's very exciting to see what's happening in the district. And the important thing is that each school is taking their own approach that fits best for their culture. And that is creating that ownership that we know is so important. And Mr. Candelaria is saying that the important thing was using a shared measurement tool and a universal approach that has created a common language and transformed our school. When you use the DESA, when you use a shared assessment tool, you're finding that all the language starts to shift. We've actually experienced that when a school or a school uses a common assessment tool, it's actually a bit of an intervention in and of itself. Teachers begin to look at children differently. They begin to notice positive behaviors. They begin to notice and be able to share, put in language the behaviors that they want to reinforce. And this really shifts the language and the culture throughout. So what we're advocating is a comprehensive system that's made up of competent, resilient adults taking care of yourself first and paying attention to that all the way through, providing relevant ongoing professional development, and whether that starts with your own learning community or accessing other resources, tapping into what's available through the Apperson folks or the Devereaux folks. We all are here to support you in your professional development and in scaling things as you really have a vision for. Using sound measurement tools is really important. The DESA yields actionable data. That is the single key to getting everybody on the same page, is looking at information about where you are right now, where are the strengths, and where you need to build your multi-tiered approach, integrating SEL across your curriculum. I've said the importance of consistency in language, using formative assessment and progress monitoring, Paul mentioned as a feature of the DESA Mini. It allows you to do quick little probes throughout the year and really find out before the end of the year whether all your efforts are making a difference. Collaboration is extremely important. Pairing kids with younger kids and older kids, some of that peer reinforcement. When you have a system-wide approach, you can really build a instructional web, you might say, that is more than just the teachers. The kids can become an active part of that. And involving parents is such an important piece of this. So I think that hopefully these past 4 webinars have reinforced our premise that social and emotional skills matter. They really are foundational for development of the whole child, and they're absolutely necessary for optimal academic learning and for their life success. It's important to know that they can be developed across all ages and stages. They can be specifically taught. I mentioned in my first presentation that Illinois has established social and emotional learning standards that have them developmentally the domains developmentally expanded from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, giving benchmarks and descriptors for what that behavior looks like within the CASEL framework for all students. So there are specific guidelines that show teachers and principals the targets that we're reaching for. Other states are also coming on board with their standards. And the resources are just beginning to grow, and I encourage you to kind of access those and see what's happening in the field. And finally, it's important to remember that social and emotional skills can be measured and they can be monitored, and we offer a system that enables you to do that and enables you to build the kind of system-wide approach that will truly make a difference. There are many resources available. We have mentioned CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, DEVRO, the DCRC, Devereaux Center for Resilient Children, is a wonderful resource, and our dear partners. Apperson is the publisher of the DESA and the provider of SEL strategies. And Edutopia is another resource that might be useful to take a look at. And then ASCD, the Association of Supervision and Curriculum Development, has done a wonderful job of thinking into the approach of the whole child in a very deep way, and there are many resources through ASCD as well. These are just some samples of places you can go to find out more information and support your own efforts. I did want to say one little shout out to this Handbook of Social and Emotional Learning that was just published. This is a wonderful resource that Paul mentioned, and I think if you take a look in that, this is a rich overview of the field of social and emotional learning, and there are many resources referenced in this piece. So thank you very much for your time. I greatly appreciate all of your attendance today, and I wish you the best in your social and emotional journey.
Great, Sheryl. Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. I'll give you just a couple of moments to catch your breath, and then we'll take some Q&A from our attendees. So if you do have a question for Sheryl, please feel free to submit it now through that questions box of GoToWebinar. We'll try to get to as many of those questions as we can. This webinar has been brought to you free today thanks to our sponsor, Apperson. School-based SEL programs are based on the idea that a student's academic success is linked to their ability to manage and regulate emotions, communicate and solve problems, and manage interpersonal conflicts. Social and emotional learning has been proven to decrease disruptive behavior, noncompliance, aggression, and disciplinary referrals. Now, technology offers tools that facilitate new ways to assess student learning. Apperson's EVO, Social and Emotional Learning Assessment, is a cloud-based version of the Devereaux Student Strengths Assessment, a two-part screener and assessment designed to help educators promote social and emotional development of students. Now, it includes the DESA Mini, which is used to screen students, and the DESA, which is administered to students who are identified as at risk for social emotional difficulties. So thanks again to Apperson for sponsoring our afternoon of learning. Also want to take a moment to pop back into the teacher learning community here at simpleK12.com. Share with you where you can find some additional resources if you'd like to learn more. Underneath our courses tab, a great place to start would be underneath our link here for learning theories and strategies. So some fabulous on-demand webinar recordings. You can watch as many times as you would like from wherever you may be. Okay, let me go ahead and get your contact information up here, Cheryl, on my screen. Did have a few questions coming in. First question came in from Spencer. Spencer says, in what ways can we support the social and emotional learning of students on the autism spectrum in our schools? Many of these students have social and emotional deficiencies different than those students who are not on the autism spectrum.
That's a great question, and certainly when we look at children with special needs, specifically in this case your kids who may be on the autism spectrum, they are certainly a part of the entire school-wide culture that you're building. And to the extent where you can, first of all, make sure that all the students in the school have the social and emotional skills to support them, whether they're on the playground or in other casual interactions, that's an important foundational piece. As Paul has mentioned in his great overview of the DESA, the DESA can provide wonderful information for all children because it's a behavioral rating scale that teachers observe. And when they look at children, particularly children perhaps specific to your question on the autism spectrum, they will find that there are kids with strengths, that every child has strengths and they have areas of need. I think building on those strengths for children that have special needs is a critically important piece. So often, children who have special needs, the focus is all on the needs and not on the strengths. So I think a very good place to start is getting good information about what their strengths are and then finding a way to create a program that builds on those strengths.
Okay, great, Cheryl. We're a little bit over time here, but we'll go ahead and ask one more question. Came in from Jean. She said, Chino Valley, when you speak of doing a baseline, does this mean all students in the district? I'm really interested in the practicality of that.
Yes, all students in the district. Every teacher was encouraged to use the DESA Second Step Edition as a rating scale to observe behaviors and have an outcome look at a snapshot of every child's strengths and weaknesses. So yes, it is a big commitment, but it's very doable.
Great, Cheryl. Thank you again for a wonderful presentation, actually two wonderful presentations. It's been a pleasure being here with you today, as always. I look forward to being here with you again for your future sessions.
Thank you very much for including us all.
Thanks again, Cheryl.